Hello and welcome to the False Start Fantasy Podcast, episode 24, the podcast where we mix terrible microphones with even worse football takes. I'm Cameron Edgecombe, joined by the greatest co host in history, Josh Newshafer. This week we'll be recapping the NFC East and going over some free agency first. But first, how are you doing, Josh?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Getting ready to hear all the news I can from the combine and watch what little I can on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the scouting combine, how that's going to go. I know right now they're doing all their interviews and they're talking to these prospects, all the teams are, and so it's not the most exciting start. But starting tomorrow, we have the live trails, and I think I'll be watching anything live by any means, but I'll at least be following along.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into the news that we have. So over the last week, we've had quite a few players get cut. No signings as of right now, as that's not we're not in the free agency period yet. That starts March 15th. So a lot of players that can be cut from teams and then go sign elsewhere. But right now, let's start with the two quarterbacks that were cut. Carson Wentz and Marcus Mariota were both cut from their teams. Any surprises there?
Uh, Not really. I'm glad the Falcons decided to watch our video when we covered the NFC South because I said cut Marcus Mariota, and sure enough, they did. Gotta say I called that one, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. At this point, Carson Wentz is a journeyman, and Marcus Mariota also a journeyman. See where he goes.
Yeah, I think Arthur Smith is a big fan of the podcast, right?
Think so at this point.
Wide receivers, the Giants cut Kenny Galladay. Once again, no surprise. They're kind of doing the work for us. NFC East, Carson Wentz and Kenny Galladay, both getting cut before we even get to get credit for it. But definitely moves we would have made too.
Oh yeah, definitely on that one.
And then Tampa Bay, they didn't cut him yet. They're going to wait till free agency starts. I imagine there's some sort of contract reason for it, but they're going to cut Leonard Fournette on the 15th. So another move that we call out for. And then one that we didn't call out was Austin Blythe is retiring. Um, the Seattle Seahawks center. Josh, just last week, I you brought up how you wanted to re-sign him, and I called you out for being a Chiefs homer. And as a fellow Chiefs homer, a little sad to see him go, right?
Yeah, he's like, don't get me wrong, Austin Blythe. He's not like top tier. I don't
No.
even think he did a whole lot with the Chiefs, honestly, because
Mm-mm.
yeah, he just didn't have to start at all. But he was a good depth piece that we had. But I mean, he's only 30 years old, so he probably had a few years left in him that were at least solid. So kind of sad to see him go, and kind of see I got that one wrong. But foresee players retiring when they're younger, so not much I can do on that one. And he had a pretty decent career, so much more than your retirement, Austin.
Yeah, credit to him. I believe in that year that we had Schwartz and Fisher both get injured, leading up to the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. I think he was ended up the starting center just because all the offensive linemen were dead, and we probably had guards playing tackle in that game because everything was shit. But
That was a rough game. Don't bring it.
yeah, sorry, bad memories. We'll move on to the next piece of news then. Bills defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier announced that he is going to be taking a year off, and I gotta say, I'm pretty shocked that this guy didn't get an NFL head coaching position. Um, I would have personally rather had him as my head coach than either of the Eagles coordinators, and I think there was a decent argument for him to be hired instead of Sean Payton, but Sean Payton's pretty great, and it's just the cost of, hey, here's the defensive coordinator who did amazing things with the Bills every single year that he has been there, and for some reason just can't get a job. But I don't know. What were your thoughts on it? Are you worried about the Bills defense now?
Um, I'm waiting to see who they hire because I haven't seen any news if they've gotten someone else to replace him
No,
yet.
they're late in the cycle. Good coaches are taken.
Um, I'll be curious to see who they promote or if they get someone else instead. Based off of that, will depend on how I feel. But still got solid depth. He's still got solid pieces for the Bills, so I'm not too worried yet. It just depends who they promote or hire instead.
Yeah, what are the chances, like 6 months from now, Bills are a fringe playoff team due to cap trouble that they'll be in, and defense maybe taking a step back, that they're like, please come back, and he comes back and takes off. The defense takes off again. Would you say that's pretty likely, or is he really going to take a full year off?
I'd say probably the full year. Even if you're coming in at the fringe moments, like you're making a playoff push, let's just say it's the last 3 weeks of the season, might not be enough time to get your defense in place unless you had enough players that were under you in the previous years. So I don't see that happening. I think it is going to be the full year off. If I remember correctly, I said it was just due to personal reasons. So whatever it is, probably needs to take that full year, at least a full season off. So I don't see him coming back unless I just don't see him coming back. I can't even think of a situation where he comes back.
Yeah. Well, Bill's defense is good. He's done a good job coaching them. Hopefully, the guys behind him are also good. And then the biggest piece of news, this just dropped today. I don't even know if you know about this news yet, Josh. But
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter earlier today.
yeah, Jalen Carter, arrest warrant has been issued for potential first overall pick Jalen Carter, as um, he is alleged to have been racing teammate Chandler LaCroix back in January after their national championship game, where LaCroix's car crashed and he died. Um, it Allegedly Jalen Carter was racing him at the time, as witnesses said they saw both of their cars weaving in and out of traffic and um, going way above the speed limit after the championship game, and he left. I don't know. I don't want to speculate anything, but I don't think this affects his draft stock that heavily. How about you?
So it just depends on like what his sentence is. If he has a long sentence, that's literally the only thing that could. But I don't think it'll affect it too much. It might push him out maybe the top 10 if anything, but that's
Yeah, I don't think racing and reckless driving will be much of a penalty to the NFL, but I guess we'll see. And since he's not on an NFL team, I don't really see how they can find a way to suspend him. But I guess we'll find out. I'm personally pretty sad about this because Jalen Carter was the guy who reminded me most of Chris Jones in this draft, and I think he's so awesome. Um, Defensive tackle position is just really, really valuable to have an awesome guy there. So a little sad to hear some bad news about him, but it's a big mistake. So we'll see what this ends up becoming.
yeah, it'll be interesting because it can heavily affect where he's drafted.
Yeah. In other news, we talked about how the NFL Combine starts tomorrow. I listed a few things that I was interested in our sheet that we have here. First things to me are running backs. Zach Charbonnet and Kendry Miller. That's UCLA and TCU's running backs. Um, I watching their film and reading some draft analysis. There's a lot of worry about those two's top end speed, and a little bit of concern about. Well, yes, you can break tackles and you can be a big bruising guy, but if you can't hit a hole and explode, then you're probably not going to succeed at the NFL level. And so I want to know those two 40 times, especially relative to their size, because if they end up having 4-5, high 4-5, 4-6 40 time, we could be looking at an Isaiah Spiller situation for those two. After that, Bryce Young's measurables. I know there was some Twitter hype of him walking in to the draft, or not the draft, the combine, next to, I think it was a tight end who was 6'7" or something like that. So he looked like a really really tiny quarterback next to that guy, but uh, I am very worried about what he measured at. I think if he's 5'10", he's gonna fall in the draft. If it's 5'11", 6 foot, I think he'll have a chance. But that extra inch can matter.
Hmm. I'll be curious just because, I mean, there is some historical precedent where smaller quarterbacks can succeed. Pre Broncos Russ, for example, you can argue he was the best quarterback for a decade. You can at least have an argument there for him.
Sure.
Um, Kyler Murray, he's been pretty good when healthy. I'm trying to think of any other ones off the top of my head, but those are like the two big recent ones that they're smaller, but they can succeed. So it's possible. Definitely nowhere near as likely, but even if he's not 5'11", 6 foot, somewhere in that range, there's still at least a chance. It just kind of depends where he lands and how the offensive coordinator works with him.
Yeah. The last thing, Josh Norris from Underdog Fantasy posted this quick video, and I need to send it to you, Josh, because you'll want to check this out. But apparently, offensive linemen who do the short shuttle drill and have a speed below 4.47 are not 80 something percent huge success rates for the NFL. It's only happened to something like 20 something times since they started having offensive linemen do the short shuttle drill. And 18, 19 of them ended up being career offensive linemen for the teams that they were drafted on, or at least in the NFL through all the teams that they played on. And I'd be very interested. Now, it doesn't mean that players who test above that are bad, but there is possibly a link there to good players, and it's not just first, second round players. It goes all the way down to the seventh round. Um, Jason Kelsey was one of those players who had a below 4.47 time as a center, and obviously that guy's been pretty good considering he was a sixth round pick.
Something like that. It's a day three pick at least.
Yep. Did you have other news, Whopper, before we move on?
Um, that I can really think of off the top of my head, other than just ready to watch highlights from the combine.
Yeah, I'll be very interested. I think Anthony Richardson's stock is about to go up when we see him do some of these drills. But we'll go ahead and move on to the divisional roundup. Starting with the NFC East this week, we have the Commanders, and that I want to highlight that their head coach is Ron Rivera, who obviously a historically good coach. However, consistently, it seems like every year he's been talked about potentially being fired. Am I crazy, Whopper?
It seems like those rumors are around every single year for the last 5 years that he's coached at this point.
Yeah, he was let go from the Panthers when they wanted to take a new um, direction with the team, and then he's been on the Commanders, and it's it's like he's never had a good offense on the team, and part of that you can blame quarterback situations. Um, he had the Dwayne Haskins and Alex Smith and um, I think Kyle Allen. Am I crazy?
Yep. Allen.
Yeah, Kyle Allen situation for 1 year. Then he had Taylor Heineke when they were supposed to be using uh, Ryan Fitzpatrick in his last year, but he ended up like uh, getting injured week one, so they were stuck with XFL quarterback who he had just gone from the XFL to the NFL, became the backup and was very good um, in his season, but not good enough that you can really say they were a great team. But that was the year that they went on to um, have some playoff success. Chase Young's rookie year, 2020, and then it's just kind of been mid ever since. Consistent contender in the NFC East, but not one that you'd really be um, betting on. So I'm happy to see they brought in Eric Bieniemy as their offensive coordinator. I know Josh, you also think pretty highly of him.
Oh yeah, Eric Bieniemy is a great hire. It's a shame that it's gotten to the point where he has to literally take a different job just to try to prove like, hey, I'm actually good at my job here.
Yeah, literally last year, Andy Reid was like, "Why the hell wasn't this guy hired?" And was getting pretty annoyed at it because he's like, "This is all the amazing things Eric Bieniemy does in another year, another coach hiring season, and um, he's on a different team, but not as a head coach." But let's go ahead and look at the problems that face the Commanders, and it's bad, but could be worse. Biggest problem: no quarterback. Um, they just cut Carson Wentz. Taylor Heineke is a free agent, and after that is no good. So you're really going to be searching in the quarterback market. They could be looking at free agents or rookies. I think it's wide open what this team can end up doing.
Yeah, actually just found this on Twitter because I remember seeing it earlier. Um, I'll explain it at the end of it real quick.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. After that, they have some meh running backs. Antonio Gibson has never really been the pass catcher he was supposed to be. And then if he's only average on the ground, what are we doing with this guy? Brian Robinson had a good rookie year, but he wasn't exceptional by any means. And then J.D. McKissick's a pass catching back who keeps showing his age more and more every year. Tight ends on the roster aren't very good. Logan Thomas, I believe, is on the roster, but is a very big cut candidate, and so he's probably not going to be coming back. And then after that, there's just not really any exciting tight ends there. And then they have this super old offensive line. It seems like year after year, these offensive linemen on the Commanders are good, not great, and they're just old. They're paying Chase Roulier $12 million, and PFF, which had opinions about PFF, whatever, had him as their third best player to play center for the team last year, and it's just like he has no business making that of money. And then the last thing that I'd say is their biggest problem is that they're paying $16 million to secondary players who aren't even on the roster anymore. William Jackson, cornerback on the Steelers, they're paying most of his salary to go to the Steelers. Landon Collins and Bobby McCain have both been released from the team. I think Landon Collins was on the Giants this year. And they're going to owe all three of those players together $16 million next year. And it's just like, that's already $28 million that we wish they were not spending. So, not good from the Commanders. Did I miss anything, Josh?
Nothing that I can really think of with their problems. Their defense is at least solid. Just all in that offense. Their offense is going to need a lot of work. And I'll save what I was going to say until you're finished talking about the Commanders there.
All right. Well, then let's move on to the good things. On the good side, Chase Young should be healthy next year, and he was a really great player in 2020. And then 2021 and 2022 have been injury-ridden seasons for him, so definitely not the production we wanted to see from him. But hopefully, he can bounce back, and we can have see good Chase Young again. Have lots of movable players and money. They can free up $30 million by restructuring contracts. This could mean that they could extend a guy like Deron Payne or sign Taylor Heineke again if they really want to, or Derek Carr. They wanted to bring in these veteran quarterbacks to be serviceable, but they don't have to restructure these contracts. That's money that does have to get paid out eventually, and you don't really need to move the money back another year, especially considering a lot of the money moving are these older offensive linemen. After that, you have three great wide receivers. I'm a big believer in Curtis Samuel, have been for a while, and uh, I like Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin a lot as well. Um, I said that their meh running backs were a problem. However, this is a good running back class. So having a decent start to the running back room is an okay spot to be. And I think a guy like Devon H, who's a super super fast running back, can't wait to see his 40-yard time. Um, could be a guy who's like Isaiah Pacheco and takes that role in this Eric Bieniemy led offense. Um, we already talked about good offensive coordinator and a great defensive line when they're healthy. Moving
So
on,
definitely.
yeah, yeah. Moving on to the moves that I think the team should make. I'm going to be um, a little spicy here. I think some of these moves are going to upset, especially Commanders fans. And the first one is that I'm letting Taylor Heineke walk. Um, good job being the backup for a few years. Can't wait for you to go be the backup somewhere else. Wish you all the best. However, he's never been the guy that they need him to be, and I think that the most money Heineke would get is by signing again with the Commanders because he already knows the franchise well here, and you just can't be paying a guy like that much money anymore. Um, After that, I believe that cutting Antonio Gibson and Logan Thomas are definitely moves that would help the team. And the last guy that I would like to see release, or if you can trade him from the team, is Cornelius Lucas. Cornelius Lucas was an offensive line player who just had a pretty average year, even below average. He's offensive tackle, and I think a team like the Raiders would be willing to take his contract and keep him there. Not a guy that I think has been developing very well, and so freeing up that would free up another $12 million, which would put you at $42 million, which is quite a lot of money in this free agency market. So you can sign and trade for quite a few good players. Um, we saw that the secondary was a weakness for the team. However, they really started to come into their own in the back half of the season. Um, Cameron Curl was a guy who I think was doing a really good job at safety, but there's more than just him in the cornerback position. Kendall Fuller definitely had some great moments. Um, I'm trying to think of the other safety's name opposite Cameron Curl. Derek Forrest. Derek Forrest was a very cheap addition to the team that played significant snaps and had a decent year. And so I think that you can go and get a guy like Jordan Poyer and add him to the team and expect some great things. But you can also just run with these guys again and maybe bring in a different safety who can be used rotationally. And I think the team should be in on those veteran quarterbacks that I mentioned, but also a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo is serviceable, way cheaper, and going to be pretty good. After that, I would like to see some tight ends added to the team. Obviously, if you have a guy like Eric Bieniemy as your offense coordinator, tight ends probably going to be a big part of the team. So getting a guy like Mike Gesicki or Dalton Schultz can be a very big bonus to the team. And specifically Gesicki, I think, is the guy that they should be getting. After that, uh, edge rusher is always a position you can use some depth in. Okoronkwo from the Texans had a very low statistical season with not too many sacks and tackles. However, he had a very high pressure rate as the edge rusher. I think can be used very well considering there's some older players on that defensive line. And then I would like to see some coverage linebackers added to the team. So a guy like Tremaine Edmonds from the Bills would be pretty nice.
All right, time for me to come in and say my thoughts. Okay, fall guy come to defensive Cornelius Lucas. He's a K-State guy. A little bit more favor towards them, so bear that in mind. But
I
he
didn't know
is
you went to
31.
K-State. That's funny.
Uh, he is 31. I actually did look it up because I was curious because I remember him playing like with the 2012 team. Just can remember if he played one more season after that or not.
Oh my god.
But still think like even if they want to, they can keep him. He's okay at the very least.
He has over $4 million cap hit, yet almost none of it is guaranteed. They can cut him, and that cap becomes only 900,000. And it's just like,
Eh,
I think it's very likely he's gone, especially considering they have other tackles that are ahead of him on the roster.
sad day. Very sad day. And the other one. And it naturally goes. Okay, there we go. So I disagree with you on the Taylor Heineke pick there.
Really? Okay.
I found this on Twitter, and this is since 2018. So the reason why I think they should keep Heineke is simply just for a backup. Don't make him the starter, obviously, but as a backup, oh, let me just put the stats out there. These are the Commanders' starting QB since 2018 in their records. Taylor Heineke, of 11-1, has the most wins out of any of them. Next up, you have Alex Smith, who was 11-5. You have Dwayne Haskins, 3-10. Carson Wentz, 2-5. Oh, Allen, 1-3. Case Keenum, 1-7. I don't know this guy's first name, but his last name is Johnson, 1-2. Sam Howell, 1-0. McCoy, 0-3. Mark Sanchez, 0-1. I didn't realize they had Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, I know that
Gilbert,
was weird. Yeah.
1-1, and then Fitzpatrick, 0-1. So he at least finds a way to go just barely over 500, which honestly, if you're a backup QB, it's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy that can get you the win here and there. You're not looking for your next, Pat Mahomes, Tom Brady type of situation. It can happen. I do actually think they should be signing Taylor Heineke. Obviously, a smaller deal because he will be the backup to the person named here. But at least sign him to a backup deal because again, he is barely over 500. He can get you some of those wins, which is really what you're looking for in the backup QB is someone that can get you those wins. You're not looking for a guaranteed because the reason why they're not a starter, but give your team a chance.
The problem with Tiny is that you don't get to pay him backup money.
Yeah.
He's shown that he's a serviceable starter, and so Spot Rack, which is what we use, it has him average annual salary at almost $20 million a year, which that's a lot of money. And I'm thinking, goodbye, Taylor Heineke. If you're going to ask for that much money, which we have no idea if he is, should not be getting that much money. If he's willing to sign an Andy Dalton style contract of like $3 million, $5 million or so a year, happily bring him back. That's awesome to have a guy like that there. But if he's asking for anything over, I'd say 8 million, then you just go ahead and let him walk because he's not going to get um, that amount of money from this team.
Yeah, I mean, commies are the commies. You got Dan Snyder as a president still, so.
Yeah.
But didn't realize Spot Rack had him going for that much. That does make a difference, but I say even for 10, worth it.
Yeah, we'll see what he ends up getting.
Get like an incentive contract and you're good.
Yeah, let's see. Over the cap has him valued at $8 million. So if you can get him in for 8 million, go ahead and go for that. But
Yeah. Definitely not for 20, though.
yeah. All right. Well, that concludes the Commanders segment. Let's move ahead on to the Giants.
Alrighty, it's time to talk about the G-Man, which were an interesting group. Coaching staff doesn't change. If you look at their offense, defense from the previous year, kind of give you an idea what they already had. Rushing offense, horde pass offense, and they were actually number one in interceptions thrown. They threw the least amount of interceptions. So the exact opposite of what you normally think when you hear Daniel Jones.
Does that
Offensively,
include fumbles? Did he have a lot of fumbles this year?
I didn't look at the fumbles. I just looked at the interceptions when I was looking at the stats there.
Okay.
The ranks. Defensive wise, very middle of the pack. They were horrid against the run, but they were actually decent against the pass, so definitely need some work. Problems. lack of playmakers outside of Saquon Barkley. Which Saquon's also a free agent, so keep that in mind. Just lack really both sides of the ball. They didn't really have, at least I don't remember any like big names standing out with their defense. They were just scrappy.
On their defensive line, they had Dexter Lawrence, who took a big step this year, and then um, outside linebacker slash edge rusher Kayvon Thibodeau had a decent rookie year. It wasn't exceptional by any means, but was good.
Say the reason why I didn't put Thibodeau's name out there is just because I know at least statistically he didn't have a great year.
No, it wasn't insane, but he is a rookie, so.
Yeah, so we'll see how he develops. But
And
well,
Leonard Williams was the other guy I was thinking of. He wasn't bad.
he was on the Giants.
Yep.
But yeah, main problem I found when looking at their team, they just don't have playmakers. A lot of their playmakers from the previous season are in the free agency. Most of them were hurt last season, at least when you're looking at the receivers, but they're just lacking playmakers. Let's also look at the good signs. They have 11 draft picks. I think they have one round and then a few extra, like the third round, because of Tony trade and all that. And when you account for Kenny Galladay being cut, they have about 47 million over the cap, so they have plenty of money to spend. Here's what I think they should do. First things first, re-sign Saquon. I don't care what you have to give him, just make sure he stays there. It was literally your entire offense this last season. Daniel Jones, I think you should re-sign him if you can get a price negotiated that's a little bit better than 45 million. Let's say a deal worth, I don't know, 3 years, 75 million between those 3 years, roughly around that, so 25 million per year. That would be a lot more doable than his 45 million he was wanting because he hasn't proved it. He's not enough Holmes-esque money. Not worth it at that point, but 25 million, I think he's proven himself as a starter. See if he can develop even more to where he's maybe like a Josh Allen level under Brian Dable. And the other ones, just because they have been solid when healthy, at least, they're when healthy. Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard. I actually like those two receivers when they're healthy. Not bad, not great, but they're solid at least, and he'll give you at least something you can build forward with when it comes to receiving.
Couldn't agree more.
Um,
They're both good, not great, but you're not paying them top of the line money anyway. So
definitely not that. I couldn't really think of any players they needed to release or trade because when I was looking at their roster, no one stood out really. They
yeah,
don't have any really big names like, oh hey, you could try to trade this guy and get some picks and develop their position here, or oh hey, this guy's costing way too much money, just go ahead drop him. It's just like don't really have notable players. I think that's a big part of the G-Men's problems. They just don't have really notable players.
couldn't agree
Outside of
more. It
Saquon.
it was a year of Brian Dable doing some awesome things, and um, credit as well to their offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. I can't believe they were able to take the steps that they did this year.
And but here's what I think they should do, at least as far as sign and trade for. First and foremost, you have the trade, like you have the draft picks. Maybe try to trade for a D Hop. Um, One of those top tier receivers. D Hop's probably the biggest name that's at least a trade candidate. If you want to believe that the GM that said Higgins, like we're not even interested in trading him away or something like that.
For T Higgins, yeah. It was either the GM or the head coach. I can't remember. That came out today, but yeah.
But
Um, I
like
think
T
a big
Higgins,
enough trade package will change their mind, but
oh yeah. Let's just say T Higgins is off the board now. The biggest name is easily D Hop. Think
absolutely.
how many draft picks they have, they can easily trade for him. They have the cap space where they can handle a big contract with him. And they actually have a star wide receiver for the first time since early 2010s. when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm just
Um,
trying to remember the name of the guy who played with Eli.
I only remember his celebration. It was the salsa. That I think I can remember his name.
Worst things to be remembered for.
Yeah. In the event you can't get D Hop for whatever reason, maybe try to sign Juju, Jacoby Myers. Again, this isn't a great receiver free agency class.
It's not the
Got some
best
decent names.
rookie draft either. Uh,
Yeah.
how much would you be willing to pay DeAndre Hopkins? Or how much would you be willing to trade for DeAndre Hopkins? Good.
Second,
Yeah, I was thinking a
uh,
second as well.
and maybe a late third, early fourth if you have it. I remember seeing something on Twitter the other day, and it's basically that's what the Cardinals are looking for is a second and some kind of comp pick as well. So Giants easily have that. They can afford to do that because again, like you just mentioned, the wide receiver class isn't great this year. So their best choice is try to get D Hop, VT Higgins if Bengals change their mind on that one. Outside of that, maybe try to sign Juju, Jacoby Myers. Those are kind of like, to me at least, the two highlights on the wide receiver class for free agency. So I get one of them. Then just for more playmakers, I was tempted to put Evan Ingram in here because I thought it'd be funny for tight end, but
Bring him back.
went ahead
Come
and
on.
said I would Gasecki or Irv Smith. I think those would be two good tight ends. They're both different styles, so they can fit well. Um,
Like the
Bellinger,
fifth team we've said that Gasecki would be good on. It's
I think he's just going to be good with
he
whichever
is.
team he
It,
goes
it's
on.
it's like the same with Tremaine Edmonds. Like we keep putting these two on every single team because they're just really good players that can fill a lot of holes and needs for teams.
So speaking of Tremaine Edmonds, also try to sign some kind of linebacker. Tremaine Edmonds is one of the ones I had there. Maybe like Lorenzo Carter. Um, definitely need some help with their front seven, which also brings on the point. Assign some of the Eagles D line if you can. Just D line in general. Eagles just have more than any other team, so I'm just gonna put the Eagles D line because basically losing all their D line, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Giants are doing very good things. I would trust any move that Brian Dable would make. I think if they trade a first for Hopkins, that's a mistake. But I do think he's at least worth a second round pick. Um, whether that's this year or next year's draft was kind of up to them. Though I have also seen DeAndre Hopkins going for a fourth round pick due to his injury history. So
I guess it fit right in with the Giants then.
yeah, right. Uh, I think the most Giants thing they could do would be sign Juju to the Kenny Galladay style contract, and then have him get injured and not play anymore. That would be very
Well,
Giants of them.
and then just a desperation trade for D Hop, and then he'll tear his other ACL as well.
Go. Uh, that everything for the Giants.
That's all I got for the Giants.
All right, love to see what those secondary players develop into. Xavier McKinney, um, is Adoree Jackson. Were both guys that I liked watching at times. So I think they're a little underrated. But moving on, we have next the Cowboys, and the Cowboys have a lot of bad. I will be very out on the Cowboys this year. And it pains me to say that because I don't actually have any problems with the Cowboys. I like Dak. I didn't hate Zeke. Um, when he had the contract signed. I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world. And now that I've actually looked into contracts, I'm like, this was the worst thing in the world. um, and then I don't like their head coach, Mike McCarthy, or their offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer. I think it was a down year definitely from the defense with Dan Quinn, but I didn't think he was doing anything bad personally. I just don't think he was really developing the players that he needed to be doing. But it's kind of the coach's job to develop those. If you can't create a cover two cornerback, at the NFL level, then you're probably not the greatest. But uh, there could be a whole number of reasons for that. So let's jump into the problems. And Josh, back me up here. They're paying Zeke and Dak too much money.
Especially Zeke. Dak, piece of QB, so whatever. They get paid too much anyways, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Zeke, though, what's he getting paid? Like 16 million this year?
it's a ridiculous
Yeah,
amount of money. Yeah, there's there's talks that they'll cut him, but it really doesn't save them that much money. And then you're paying him about as much money as you would to be on the team. So I think they just keep him. Um, if he's willing to restructure, great. I doubt he is though, because well, he's a running back, and I don't think he would be wanting to restructure. Yeah, 16.7 million. Um, is his contract. If they cut him, he's at 11.8 million from the team. So basically, they'd be saving $5 million, and that's just not enough to warrant paying like that. When
yeah.
he had when he hasn't been the worst player of all time. It's just not
I
a lot of
remember
savings there. It's a bad, dumb contract with too much guaranteed money. I don't. It's not smart.
I remember seeing something the other day, and it's like some kind of medical professional saying like he thinks he's on his last leg, basically. Like his
Uh,
just legs just don't have it in it anymore.
Yep, I believe it. Kind of the same thing we've seen with Julio Jones. Next biggest
Mhm.
problem is that they didn't have a wide receiver too, and it was killing them not having Amari Cooper all year. The team decided to bet on having Michael Gallup instead of Amari Cooper, so they traded Amari Cooper away. And then Michael Gallup got injured. I think he came back too soon and wasn't able to play at the same level that he needed to be. So hopefully, when he's healthy again, he'll be good. But I can't think of a time we saw a player drop so heavily due to an injury, um, and then come back into greatness. Because he ended up playing like 6 games at the end of the season, and it's like, uh, you're probably not the same player you were, and you probably won't be ever again. I don't think we're gonna see Gallup as a wide receiver too in the NFL um, level anymore, but we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
After that, they have a lot of free agents that they can't afford to bring back. Their linebackers, Anthony Barr and Leighton Vander Esch. They had a couple safeties, a number of corners that spent significant time on the team. Um, Wide receivers, offensive, like it's everywhere. There are guys that are going to be free agents from everywhere. This was an all-in year from the Cowboys, and it was an all-in year before that, so it's really, really worrying. After that, they're still paying Lyle Collins 8.3 million. He's on the Bengals now. Um, so that's definitely not good to see so much dead cap going somewhere else. The NFC East is really, really good. And even after restructuring everybody, which they won't be able to do, and they're not going to do, they're only able to free up $37 million, which doesn't even include re signing some of the guys that they lost. Speaking of, well, let's go ahead and jump into those guys. And I wanted to start with two players who had bounce back years, and big credit to them. Leighton Vander Esch had a very good year for the Cowboys. They needed a linebacker to step up, and he did for the team. Um, the he was good in coverage. He was good against the run, and he wasn't in pass rush very often. But I liked what he was doing.
Leighton
After,
Vander Esch, as
go ahead.
long as he's healthy.
Yeah, yeah. As long
Yeah,
as
I
he's
remember
healthy.
like when he first came to the league, he was, in my opinion, one of the best younger not tight ends,
Linebackers.
linebackers. But
Yeah,
it's just the health that's the issue with him.
yeah. After that, I wanted to call out T.Y. Hilton. That guy looked good. He was really only a postseason signing that they brought into the team, but with almost zero reps with the team, he was able to put up decent numbers. And I think you go ahead and re-sign him if he's willing to come back for a veteran minimum contract.
Mm.
After that, I did want to talk about Dorrance Armstrong. Any edge rusher that you have opposite of Micah is going to put up decent numbers due to the effect that Parsons has on an offensive line. But Dorance Armstrong had a very good year with, I think, 7.5 sacks. He's already contracted through their current year, but if you can re-sign him, you can move this cap that they structured into his deal into future years and free up even more money for the team. Also, definitely being a homer there, as I'm pretty sure he went to KU. Am I right on that?
And he's like the best prospect KU's had since Aqib Talib. So
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. With that, how is I'd like to see him be re-signed. I did also want to talk about some of the good on the team. The O line is still mostly there. You lost some depth pieces, but I I believe that the Cowboys can continue to keep uh, their offensive line together, and if they stay healthy, they can be very good. And Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb, two of their best players, are still on their rookie contract, so there's a lot of money that can be saved there. So it's not too late to go all in, but oh man, those contracts are saying otherwise. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Mike McCarthy and the new coaching staff to develop a ton of players. Lastly, I want to talk about some of the players that will possibly be leaving the team. I already mentioned that you don't let Zeke walk. However, you probably are going to go ahead and let Dalton Schultz walk. He's a free agent. Said that he should go to sign with a few different teams, but Josh, are you thinking they need to re-sign Dalton Schultz, or am I crazy here?
that's how much he's won.
Yeah.
Um, as how much cap does the Cowboys have again?
Not much. If they restructure all those contracts, they can free up 37 million. But not every player is going to be willing to, and not every player will deserve it. So I'd estimate they're only really able to free up around 28 million.
So
Not including
if he's
signing
willing
back
to
a
take
lot
a
of
pay cut,
players.
yeah, if he's willing to take a pay cut, then sure. Otherwise, yeah, just let him walk. Don't get me wrong, he's a good part of the offense. Dak really likes throwing to him, but he doesn't add a whole lot outside of a safety blanket, essentially. Just like, oh hey, I'm in trouble. Where's Dalton?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. The
I
price is right. Yes.
Yeah. I would rather see
The
them
price.
get one of the tight ends that are in this draft class. I think it's a decent tight end draft class. Uh, just don't spend too high of a pick on that. If you use their late second pick that they have on him, that'd be fine with me. But after that, um, Tony Pollard, I think you go ahead and franchise tag him. You're able to free up enough money. Go ahead and keep him on for another year. Um, had a fantastic season. And then I would be releasing guys like Jordan Lewis, Neville Gallimore, Chauncey Golston to free up an extra $7 million. And then there's guys after that that you can release that would free up like a million or so. It's kind of up to the coaching staff to decide those things. I don't watch the third string players that heavily to know whether or not guys like Josh Ball deserve to stay on the team when he's making $1 million a year. So after that, I'm a little worried about Anthony Barr retiring. The guy hasn't played he's only 30, but he hasn't played a full season since 2017, though he did have a good bounce back year. Jason Peters was a backup left tackle for the team this year, and the dude's 41. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
I'm blown away that any player over the age of 30 can continue to play in the NFL. I really don't care at the position. T.Y. Hilton could retire, re-sign him if he does, and then they had two long snappers on the roster that are 35 and 37 years old. I'd be a little worried about them getting them retiring, and then uh, the guys that I think they should go out and sign and trade for. Veteran corner quarterback to be. You have two options. You got to get a second quarterback. You can either uh, go get Stephon Gilmore or Rasul Douglas, these veteran cornerbacks, and hope that they're willing to chase for a ring on a franchise like the Dallas Cowboys. Go get one of those two players, or I think you can trade maybe next year's second round pick for a guy like Greg Newsome, who's on the Browns. Browns are paying way too much money to two players right now, and they're not going to have a lot of money to re-sign a guy like Greg Newsome, uh, who's been a fantastic cornerback on the Browns. So I think you could get him as a different option, though. When it comes to pay him, they're probably going to also let him go. After that, Taylor Stallworth is a defensive tackle. I would like to see them bring in. There's a couple coverage linebackers, Alex Singleton, Corey Littleton, that I would be interested in. Though Corey Littleton is very good also against the run. And then Melvin Ingram is a rotational pass rusher that I'd like to see on the team. I'm a big fan of the Chiefs' method of bringing in these veteran players who have been counted out and give them another chance, like Melvin Ingram was 3 years ago.
What's that already 3 years ago?
Maybe two. I think it was the 2021 season. That'd be 2 years ago.
I don't remember at this point. I just remember he was good for us.
Yeah, last year's Dolphins was used very sparingly. But did you have any comments about the Cowboys?
Right now, literally their biggest saving grace to me is the fact that Parsons and CeeDee Lamb are cheap.
Yeah.
Cowboys just pay too much money for players that aren't worth that much money as they come.
Yeah.
But overall, I'd say that's a pretty good plan. Basically, to me, they have one more year to maybe make a run at a Super Bowl, if anything, because you don't get any cheaper soon, and then soon you're going to be hitting that CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons contract, and you probably want to keep those two, and goodbye to all your money, because you still got Dak.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy's biggest complaint about Mike McCarthy, is that he just can't seem to win those big games. He makes these foolish blunders, and we have seen that over and over again on the Cowboys. And so it's like there's no way he
was a
says,
bad hire.
yeah, there's no way Mike McCarthy's thinking, oh, I have a year that I could be a down team and trust in my staff to build up players like Bill Belichick and Kyle Shanahan seem to do. Andy Reid obviously did that this year, but not to be too much of a homer. Those guys who are really good coaches trust in their teams to develop their players. I don't think Mike McCarthy's going to do that. I think he's going to bring in veteran players, overpay them, and the team's going to be mid again, and mid again and again and again.
Let's say they just need to get rid of Mike McCarthy at this point.
It is what
Get
I
someone
believe.
else. Even promote Dan Quinn at this point. I don't care because I've been saying it since day one. Mike McCarthy was a mistake.
Yep.
It's just another puppet for Jerry Jones.
Yep, I think that's exactly why he was hired. Was he was willing to work with Jerry Jones. Um, it would be pretty wild to see Dan Quinn promoted to the team, but if they start off really really bad, I wouldn't be surprised at it. But let's move on to the last team in the NFC East and the Super Bowl runner-ups, Philadelphia Eagles.
So, Eagles. Unfortunately, they weren't able to fly as high as they wanted. They were just like a few feet short, essentially. But they're very interesting to me this offseason. So, head coach Nick Sirianni, he's the only one between offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, head coach that remained. New offensive coordinator is Brian Johnson. He's taken over for the second best offense behind only the Chiefs. They were literally top 10 in every step other than passing touchdowns, which with that run game, fair enough. And they brought in Sean Desai, I'm guessing how you pronounce his name, from the Seahawks. He takes over for a defense that was top 16 in all stats. They were the best in sacks and pass yards. However, that's probably going to change this year. Problems. I actually found a lot more problems than goods. Um, Say goodbye to most of your D line that you had. Eagles had arguably one of the best D lines in the NFL this last year, and I think only like two or three of them are remaining. A lot of rotational pieces because they had a lot of veterans, but just go ahead and say goodbye to them. We brought it up like 6 times since we started the divisional roundup. Um, let's get some of the Eagles D line players because there's a bunch of them and they're all good. Notable free agents that they're also going to be losing potentially: James Bradbury, Boston Scott, the Gardner Johnson, Miles Sanders are also hitting free agency, so that's two of their better cornerbacks and two of their depth pieces when it comes to running back. They'll have Gainwell, who did look very good at the end of the season, so that's the bright side of the running back room. But yeah, definitely some big hits there, and those are the biggest names. I'll talk about one other person later on. Um, only have like 2 draft picks outside the first 3 rounds or something like that. They don't have a lot of ammo outside those first 3 rounds. They start under 9 million underneath the cap roughly, and when you restructure all the contracts we could on the tool that we use, we're just barely getting over the cap. And when I say barely, I'm talking about like 250,000.
Okay.
And the last problem, this is a long-term problem. It's not immediate this year, but you know it's at least in the back of the GM's mind. You got to get ready to start paying Jalen Hurts soon. This is year 4, I believe. Correct?
The year behind Carson Wentz. Um, I think this is year 3.
This is year 3.
No, this is year 4. When was he
As
drafted?
yeah,
Why don't
this
we
would be
know
year
this?
4.
Yeah.
As he sat a year behind Carson Wentz until I took over. Carson Wentz went to Indy, then he went to the commies. So yeah, this would be year 4.
Okay. Yep.
So it's not like an immediate problem getting ready to pay him, but it's definitely one of those things you have to keep in the back of your mind. Try to save a few $1,000s here and there. Um, excuse me there. Looking at the good. Have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. They have 2 first-round picks. Thank you, the Saints. Um, and most of their offensive core outside the running backs is back. That's pretty much all the good I have. Um, line, see what happens. But here's what I think they should do: sign as much as that D line you can. Have Hargrave, Cox, Quinn, Graham. Um, those were kind of like the biggest names that I saw that were hitting the free agency from that D line. Try to re-sign Isaac Sumelo. I think is how you his name. I probably mispronounced it,
Malu.
but
Hmm.
he was a pretty solid O lineman. He was part of arguably the best O line in the NFL. They're at least top 5 in my opinion. Um, you can re-sign him because that O line was able to dominate some games. And then and this one's just kind of more of a personal preference or whichever one's cheaper. Boston Scott or Miles Sanders. They're both pretty, or at least fairly explosive. They're both decent pass catchers. You got Kenneth Gainwell, who looked extremely good there at the end of the season. I'd say just bring back one of those two, mostly as a depth piece. Um, this one's going to be interesting at least. I would say when it comes to releasing or trading players, this one's going to hurt Eagles fans, and I know this is going to hurt. But Darius Slay, the better cornerbacks. I mean, yeah, you can save up to 5 million in cap if he's released. You'd probably be able to trade him if you really wanted to. You can get some pieces like draft picks for him, and then also take his contract, and that'll save you a little bit more money. He is the most expensive player that they currently have on roster.
I got this when I first saw
Then,
this. I was like, "There's absolutely no way with the season that Darius Slay just had that you're gonna be able to that you're willing to trade this guy." And then I started looking at all the players that they have to play. I looked at the massive cap figure that the that he has, and it's like,
Yep.
huh, maybe you do need to trade him. I will say trading him
Uh,
might not be the easiest thing because he has a dead cap of $21.2 million. If he's not back, you're in
mhm.
trouble. But
Yeah, I'd say the Eagles are actually more in trouble than I thought they were. Um, like I said, there's more bad than good that I can foresee. They'll be good. Like, don't get me wrong, they'll still be good, but it's going to be a rough off season at the very least.
yeah,
Next thing they have, and this,
re- they're definitely gonna be reaching out to all those players that you mentioned to see, hey, you want to run it back for a ring at veteran minimum? And most of those players are gonna say no thanks.
last thing I will have for releasing or trading. Um, Again, this one that hurts my heart as an O lineman, and they had such a dominant O line, but maybe see if you can get some interest in trading either Lane Johnson or Mylata. See if the teams will take their contracts, especially. Johnson is very expensive, but he's well worth the money. Mylata, he's still fairly cheap for O lineman standards, or at least top tier O lineman, but again, very expensive for the team. Um, Mostly comes down to are those teams also willing to take the contracts, but it definitely hurt. Um,
Yeah,
but
you looking at
at this
the
point, they're in
situation,
trouble.
looking at the situations, you can't trade either. Um, the dead cap for Lane
So
Johnson is 20. The dead cap for Lane Johnson is $24 million that won't go away if he's traded, and Mailata's is $11 million. And considering he was um, being paid something like 11 million anyways, it's not really an option. 15 million was his contract, and he has 12 million on dead cap. So it's like
Jesus.
while you'd think about like, okay, I need to make some moves so I can save some money. It doesn't seem like the money's actually movable for the Eagles.
Because I always forget to look at dead cap. Whoops. But either way, I won't say they're cap held, but definitely feeling a little bit strangled right now. Retirees, some Kelsey, maybe don't know yet.
Yeah,
Because I haven't heard any word. He's come with a decision yet.
I was him. I'd retire.
Um, yeah, I'm hoping he plays another year or two because he is fun to watch. Remember on Pat McAfee show they had a in the trenches segment for the Super Bowl, and naturally because the guy that was kind of doing like the host of that little segment, the big Eagles fan or at least a fan of the O line. Naturally, he ends it with a play where Jason Kelsey pulls and he just trucks Willie Gay. It's
Yeah.
like Jesus Christ, this guy's old as fuck and he's still doing this good. Ow. But he is getting up there in age, so I can completely understand if he wants to retire. Lineman is rough on the body, but it's kind of like the big question mark because I feel like if you're Philly and he decides not to retire, you have to re-sign him. He is like the heart and soul of Philadelphia. I'm convinced at this point.
Yeah, I
Um,
would agree.
it's one of those you kind of have to re-sign him at least for a year. See if he wants to retire, then just go kind of by like a 1 year if needed. But see what happens on that one. Um, and for signing and trading, obviously the D line probably going to be losing a lot of those players, so they'll probably need to get some kind of help. Maybe target some players in the draft. Outside that, I would say secondary should be their main target because at least throughout most of the year, that's how they got beat was the secondary. So try to get some defensive help. Maybe a running back if you don't want to re-sign Boston Scott or Miles Sanders. There's only like 5 million good running backs in this draft class, so
Yeah, never. A lot of people thinking this was the big prove it year for Nick Sirianni, saying, hey, you have a great roster and need to win. I disagree. It's when you have a bad roster and need to win that is your prove it year. And I think that is this year for Nick Sirianni. Both coordinators gone. 7, I think, starters on the defense gone. Potentially, your center, who's been the rock of the offensive line, is going to be retiring, and you're going to have a big decision to make with the team's quarterback. I doubt we get a Jalen Hurts extension before the season starts. Um, I would like to see what he does one more year. Considering this will be his fourth year, you didn't get to see him much the first year, and this was only his really one good year. Shouldn't guarantee him a Mahomes contract, but two could be a pretty interesting discussion about it. Um, love so I think they sign him at the end of the year rather than at the start of this year, but will be a big discussion about them. Uh, and then just a lot of players that um, a lot of big things. But I did want to come back to the coaching staff real quick. We're way over the time, but I don't think any of our passionate viewers are really going to mind that much. But offensive coordinator Brian Johnson, uh, this guy was the quarterbacks coach over the last 2 years for the team, and then was the quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator for Florida in 2020. Remember, that was Kyle Trask's year, who looked like a good quarterback and got himself drafted the second round, despite not actually being a good quarterback. so, um,
Yeah.
so big credit to Brian Johnson. If this guy is a quarterback whisperer, and if he can do a good job with this offense, oh my gosh, this guy could. I mean, the Eagles could lose another offensive coordinator because developing a quarterback is everything to the NFL. And then the guy on their defense, Sean Desai, um, he was the Seahawks assistant last year, and Seahawks defense looked good. So whatever credit you want to give him there. But the thing I really wanted to highlight with the Eagles was that they have said this before. They purposefully cast a super wide net when interviewing coordinator positions. And especially with this defense, they interviewed more people for that position than I think any other organization for any of their positions, including head coaching. Um, just because they wanted to get as many opinions as possible about what should they do about this defense, because so many of the players are gone. You've lost your defensive coordinator, the guy in charge, and then it's the guys that remain are kind of old. Um, we talked about Darius Slay being a potential trade candidate, but he's also being paid so much money that you can't really. And then you got Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, are all on the team, and it's just like this is older team. Uh, so what is the plan? And that's why they interviewed so many people, is they wanted as many opinions as they could get. But can't wait to see what the Eagles look like. If you had to pick, and I know this is way before free agency, way before the draft, way before anything, who do you think's winning this division next year?
I'm still gonna say Eagles just because that offense is that good. Although, I can't say Commanders right now because it's literally Sam Howell or whatever his name is
Yeah,
for
if they
QB.
had Derek Carr, I might say Commanders. Can't say him right now. I'm
Yeah,
taking the G-men. Um, I like their head coach
yeah,
too much.
G-Man would be the only other contender, but it also depends what they do with Saquon and Daniel Jones.
I think that would continue the curse of no team wins back-to-back years in the NFC East. So, um, I would.
Yeah, because looking at the Eagles, I'm just like, have fun.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think that does it for this week's episode. Josh, you have anything else to add before we close out?
Um, excited to watch Combine, especially K State guys, and see if Deuce Vaughn can break 5'6".
Yeah, you're talking about height. I was not. I was thinking 40 time. I was like, he better break 5'6". Oh my god. Um,
Say if he's 5'6" and a quarter, I'll take it.
yeah, I would like this. I can't wait for Deuce Vaughn's 40 time. Yeah, I would like to see him run as fast as possible, of course, but I think he can really boost his draft stock. And then I do worry about Bijan actually lowering his draft stock with the combine. Um, from what I've seen, watching Big 12 games, it seems like he uses one cutback move a lot. And because he's so good, that one cutback move just kills. And he's so athletic and so much better than every other player out there on the field that he does amazing. But sometimes he needs to take a short step and just explode. And I'm not sure he can do that. So I think the combine could show some agility and top speed weakness that might not really be a concern with this game, but might look like it's a concern with this game. So a little interesting there for Bijan Robinson fans out there. But we'll be back next week to talk about the AFC East with Andrew Cooper, or Coop, from Fantasy Alarm. He's a big friend of the Fall Start Fantasy podcast, so we'll be super excited to have him on next week. So remember to follow us on Twitter at FallStartFPod and tune in next week so you can be ready before the ball is snapped. Thank you and goodbye.